The alarm buzzed at 5 in the morning, but Emily had been awake for over an hour already. In her small wooden house nestled beside a pine forest, a warm yellow light flickered from the kitchen, where she was gently melting beeswax over the stove. Her hands moved with quiet confidence, stirring the golden liquid as her eyes focused on the shine, the scent, and every tiny detail. To Emily, every candle was not just a product, it was a piece of her heart. In the living room, her mother, Diane, lay curled under a blanket on her recliner, her face tired but peaceful. Arthritis had taken away the strength of her once nimble hands, but not her deep love for the craft or for her daughter. Couldn't sleep again? Diane's voice came softly as Emily poured the last bit of wax into its mold. I just got up early, Mom. I have a few orders to deliver at the market today, Emily replied with a smile, wiping her hands on a cloth. She walked over and gently pulled the blanket higher over her mother's shoulders. I'm working on the lavender set, the kind you used to love. Diane smiled. Her eyes gleamed with both pride and worry. You've given up so much, Emily. You deserve a life of your own, not just candles and caregiving. Emily didn't respond right away. She poured a cup of herbal tea and sat beside her mother. This is my life. When I see someone smile because of what I made, it feels enough. Silence fell for a moment. Only the crackle of the stove and the soft scent of lavender hung in the air. You know, Diane said, what you're doing, it's more than craft. It's tradition. But don't forget you also deserve to love and be loved. Emily lowered her gaze and nodded softly. Deep down, maybe she was waiting for something or someone. After making sure her mother had eaten and taken her medication, Emily began packing her candles into a large fabric bag. Lavender, cinnamon orange, almond. Each one neatly labeled by hand, each one crafted with care. Just before she left, she turned to look back. Diane gave a gentle nod, her eyes filled with warmth. Emily knew, even without her hands, her mother was always behind her. The wooden door clicked shut behind her. A new day had begun, though she had no idea it would be the day that would change everything. The town's Friday market sat at the heart of Main Street, where cobblestone paths curved around vintage storefronts and old trees that had stood watch for decades. Emily had come here every week for years. It was more ritual than routine. She carried her large fabric bag, filled with carefully wrapped candles, lavender, cinnamon, almond, mint. Each one a quiet creation, softly scented, just like the woman who made them. She chose her usual spot beneath an old maple tree, where the morning sunlight filtered through golden leaves. There she laid out her worn checkered cloth and began arranging the candles in tidy rows. A small hand-painted sign read, Emily's Handmade Candles, made by hand, made by heart. The market was coming to life, the air filled with the mingling aromas of fresh-baked bread, coffee from a nearby food truck, and the calming scent of herbs wafting from Emily's booth. Morning, Emily, came a voice from the next stall. It was Mrs. Ruby sorting bright orange carrots into baskets. What do you have today? I just poured a new batch of peppermint candles. Very refreshing, Emily answered with a smile. Mrs. Ruby nodded with fond approval. You always put such care into your work. Your mom must be proud. Not far away, Mr. Glenn, the apple vendor, whistled. You've scented half the market again, Emily. People knew Emily, not just for her candles, but for the gentle way she carried herself. Quiet, steady, sincere. Around 9 a.m., just as the sunlight began to sharpen, a man unfamiliar to the market stepped into the crowd. He wore a navy blazer, tailored slacks, and polished shoes, too refined for a humble marketplace. But his eyes weren't condescending. They were curious. He stopped in front of Emily's table and picked up a cedarwood candle. His fingers brushed the smooth wax, studying it with unexpected intent. Did you make this? Emily looked up, slightly surprised but calm. Yes, all of them are handmade. Each one takes about a day from melting to wrapping. The man nodded slowly. I haven't seen anything quite like this in the places I've been. There's something honest about them. He met her eyes, not like a buyer sizing up a product, but like someone listening to something deeper. Are you shopping for someone? Emily asked gently. He smiled softly. My mother. She used to love handmade things, but her hands are too weak now. I want to find something with a soul. Emily paused, then gave a small nod. I can do a custom set for her, if you'd like. He reached out a hand. I'm Andrew. Emily. They shook hands, light but warm, like an unspoken promise had just begun. Andrew didn't rush. He continued browsing through the candles, carefully as if admiring pieces of art. Emily stayed quiet, giving him the space to connect with each item. You said you could make a custom set for my mother, he said gently. She used to be a seamstress, made wedding dresses by hand, but in recent years, arthritis has made it impossible for her to hold a needle. Emily nodded, her expression softening. I understand. My mom used to make candles too. She taught me everything, before her hands gave out. Andrew paused, a flicker of something in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, then smiled. Maybe they'd get along. They definitely would, Emily replied, her voice warmer now. What kind of candles would you like? He pulled a small photo from his coat pocket, a silver-haired woman sitting in a lavender garden, her eyes bright, her smile gentle. This is my mom, Margaret. She likes neutral colors and soft scents. But the most important thing is they have to be easy to hold. Her hands hurt if she grips anything too long. Emily took the photo, studying it closely. I have a rounded mold. Fits nicely in the hand, not too heavy. I can use a blend of beeswax and soy wax. It stays soft and burns cooler. Andrew listened closely, as if every detail mattered. I don't know much about candles, but I can tell when someone puts their heart into what they make. Emily smiled, her cheeks coloring slightly. I just do what my mom taught me. Every candle should tell a story. And this story, Andrew said slowly, should be about a mother who used to sew wedding dresses by hand, a woman who loved beauty and now needs something that makes her feel cared for. Emily nodded, her heart quietly responding to the care in his words. This wasn't just a purchase, this was love. I'll need about a week, she said. You can come back next Friday, or I can call you when it's ready. Andrew paused, then shook his head. I'll come back. I want to see how it all turns out. They exchanged contact info. Emily wrote her number on a small slip of paper, the handwriting gentle, just like her. Before leaving, Andrew turned back one last time to look at the booth. Thank you, Emily. I think my mother's going to love this gift. Thank you for trusting me, she replied, watching as he disappeared into the crowd. She didn't quite understand why her heart was racing. Maybe it was the special order, or maybe it was the person who placed it. In Emily's small kitchen, filled with warm morning light, the soft scent of beeswax mixed gently with lavender hung in the air. On her wooden table, rows of candle molds stood neatly beside handwritten labels. Margaret's light. Handcrafted with care. She moved with care, melting the wax, blending fragrances, choosing the right shade of color, and pouring it into molds with the focus of someone in a quiet meditation. She had never taken this much time with a set of candles. Every time she looked at the photo of Margaret, she adjusted something. Maybe the mold's edge, maybe the depth of a groove, or simply the shade of the wax. She couldn't explain why she cared this much. Perhaps it was the empathy she felt for the mother, or perhaps it had something to do with the son who had placed the order. What's on your mind? Diane called from the living room, noticing how long Emily had been standing still by the molds. Emily blinked, smiling. Nothing, Mom. Just working through a new idea. Diane slowly made her way into the kitchen. This is the first time I've seen you forget to turn off the stove. That set must be very special. Emily turned down the flame, her voice barely above a whisper. It's for a customer's mother. Someone kind. Diane studied her daughter for a moment, then smiled knowingly. Kind? Or someone who made your heart flutter a little? Emily blushed and said nothing, quietly adjusting a wick. You've spent years living just for me, Diane said gently, and I'm so grateful. But you also deserve something. That's just for you. Emily stayed quiet. Her mother's words weren't new, but this time, they touched something inside, something unspoken and quietly longing. She handed over a freshly poured candle for her mom to smell. What do you think of this scent? Diane inhaled deeply. Soft, thoughtful, like you. Emily looked up at her mother, her lips lifting into a quiet smile. For the next week, Emily worked with unmatched precision, She tested 5 different scent blends, chose glass jars that were lightweight, redesigned the labels to be easier to grip for sore hands. Every night, while rubbing Diane's hands with warm oil, she'd talk about the kind stranger at the market, the way he had looked at the candles like they held a soul. Diane never said much, but she always smiled with a knowing calm. As the final pieces came together, Emily wrote a small card in careful script. To Mrs. Margaret, may these lights bring you warmth and care, just as your hands once stitched beauty into every wedding dress. She folded the card and placed it gently atop the candle box. Then she looked down at her own hands, the hands once guided by her mother's. Now they were forming a quiet thread, connecting her heart to another mother's, through the quiet language of melted wax. The following Friday, Emily rose with the sun. She placed the custom candles into a small wooden box, lining it with soft white linen and tying it with a cream-colored ribbon. The handwritten card sat perfectly centered, like a quiet whisper from her heart. Diane sat at the kitchen table, watching as her daughter tied the bow with care. I don't think I've ever seen you wrap something this carefully. Emily smiled gently. I just want to do it right. After all, it's a gift for someone's mother. The morning air was crisp, laced with the scent of fresh-cut grass and toasted bread from the bakery down the street. The market was just coming alive when Emily arrived. She laid out her cloth, arranged her usual display, but today her eyes kept drifting toward the entrance, as if waiting. Then he appeared. Andrew walked in, dressed more casually than before, sleeves rolled up, light khaki pants. But his eyes were the same, warm, attentive. He approached and noticed the wooden box set aside at the edge of the table. That for me? He asked softly. Emily nodded. I finished the candle set. Soft scents, small size, easy to hold. I also handcrafted the lid, so your mother can open it with ease. Andrew picked up the box carefully, as if afraid to damage it. He lifted the lid. Inside were 5 candles, each a pale hue: ivory, blush pink, mint green, soft yellow, and white. Each one carved with a word: peace, memory, warmth, care, light. He stood silent for a few moments, his eyes never leaving the gift. They're more beautiful than I imagined, he said finally, his voice low and sincere. Thank you, Emily. Not just for the candles, but for putting your heart into them. Emily looked down, a little flustered. I just thought about my mom and yours. They seem alike in many ways. Andrew nodded, his face softening. She's going to love this. And so do I. He reached for his wallet, but Emily gently stopped him. I don't need anything more. Honestly, I already received enough, just hearing you speak about your mother. Andrew held her gaze for a long moment, then smiled, not broadly but deeply, enough to stir something in her chest. In that case, may I invite you to dinner? He asked. My mother would like to meet the woman who made these. Emily blinked. I'm not sure I'd fit in. Margaret will love you. Trust me. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. All right. Yes. Andrew grinned. Tomorrow evening, 6 o'clock. I'll come pick you up. Even after Andrew had walked away, Emily stood quietly behind her booth. Her heart was still racing, not because of the dinner invitation itself, but because of what it meant, a step into a world she'd never belonged to. She looked down at her hands, scented with wax, calloused from work, nothing like the kind of hands that held crystal glasses or rested on white linen napkins. A quiet worry stirred inside her. Who was she to sit at the same table as his mother? That evening, while packing up, Emily told Diane. Her mother simply smiled and placed her hand gently over Emily's. You don't need to be anyone else, Emily. Just be you. That's always enough for someone who truly sees you. Emily said nothing, but later, under the soft glow of their kitchen lamp, she carefully ironed the simplest linen dress she owned. She had said yes, and in a quiet corner of her heart, something gentle had begun to bloom. That evening, after packing everything away and sitting quietly in her small kitchen, Emily looked at the empty candle box on the table and wondered, what would Margaret feel when she lit a flame crafted by her hands? But more than that, she found herself anticipating something she couldn't quite name, not from the candlelight, but from the eyes of the man who carried it home. When Andrew's car pulled up in front of the White House at the end of the maple-lined street, Emily felt her heart skip a beat. The home wasn't grand, but it was elegant in a quiet, thoughtful way. Every detail spoke of care and warmth. Andrew stepped out first and opened the door for her, his eyes still holding that familiar calm. "My mom's in the kitchen. She's very excited to meet you." Emily nodded, clutching her small bag a little tighter. She'd spent the entire afternoon preparing, wearing a pale linen dress, her hair tied back, her old flats polished clean. She was still herself, but perhaps a slightly braver version. The door opened and the soft scent of lavender filled the air. Not just any lavender, but her own candle, glowing gently on the oak dining table in the center of the room. Margaret was setting down white ceramic plates. She turned when she heard the door, and her face lit up at the sight of Emily. "You must be Emily," she said warmly. "Thank you for the beautiful gift. It's more than just candles. It's something that made the whole house feel alive again." Emily smiled, offering a small bow. "I'm so glad you like them." "Liked isn't enough," Margaret replied, motioning to the chair beside her. "They reminded me of the years when my hands still worked. I used to sew wedding gowns, you know?" Emily nodded. "Andrew told me. I think you and my mother would have a lot in common." Andrew smiled as he stepped into the kitchen to get water, watching the two women settle into conversation. Over dinner, homemade pasta prepared by Margaret, they talked about craft, about the little details that make something meaningful, and about how painful it can be to lose the ability to use your hands when they once gave you your livelihood. "There was a day," Margaret said softly, "when I tried to mend an old scarf. Just holding the needle hurt so much, I cried. But when I lit your candle, it felt like someone was holding my hands for me." Emily said nothing. She just looked at her and saw her own mother, Diane, reflected in those eyes. "My son," Margaret turned to Andrew, "he's always busy. I was surprised he even stopped at a candle booth." Andrew chuckled. "At first I didn't know why either, but when I smelled the lavender, it brought something back, something old." Margaret nodded. "Sometimes what makes us stop isn't the surface, it's the truth beneath." Emily glanced at Andrew. For the first time, he didn't seem like someone from another world, but someone carrying his own quiet ache, just like her. After dinner, Margaret invited Emily to stay for tea. The three of them sat in the living room, candlelight flickering across their faces as they shared stories. Emily spoke of her mother, of the evenings spent pouring wax together. Margaret listened without interrupting. As Emily stood at the doorway to leave, she turned back to Margaret. "It was an honor to meet you. Thank you for welcoming me like family." Margaret smiled and took her hand. "You already are, Emily. You have been, long before tonight. You just didn't know it yet." Andrew drove her home in silence, but no words were needed. Something had been lit between them, quiet, steady, and real. A week after dinner with Andrew's mother, Emily received a short message. "Saturday, 7 p.m. Dinner with me? A." She stared at the screen for a while before replying with a single word. "Yes." The restaurant was tucked into a quiet side street, lit with warm golden lamps. White linens covered each table, with a small bundle of dried lavender at the center. It wasn't flashy, but it felt thoughtful, intentional. Andrew had chosen a table by the window, where soft streetlight flickered like candlelight on glass. When Emily walked in, he stood. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. She didn't need much to be beautiful. Her honesty lit up every space she entered. "You came," Andrew said softly, like a greeting meant only for her. "I hope I'm not late," Emily smiled. "Never." They ordered something simple, fresh pasta, salad, and a glass of white wine. But their conversation was anything but simple. Andrew spoke of his childhood, his mother sewing into the night while he read nearby, the scent of fresh fabric and steam from the iron still vivid in his mind. "You know," he said, leaning back, "you never realize what turns into a lasting memory, like a candle, for instance." Emily laughed. "Is that a compliment or product feedback?" Andrew grinned. "Both." Then his tone shifted. "Honestly, I feel calm when I'm with you. No pressure, no pretense. You feel like a pause I didn't know I needed." Emily stayed quiet. His words touched something deep inside, where her loneliness lived, where her desire to be truly seen had always been hidden. "I feel it too," she said gently. "I thought I was used to just being with my mom. But since I met you, something feels different." When dessert arrived, a warm slice of apple tart with vanilla ice cream, Andrew looked at her for a long moment, then slowly reached across the table. He placed his hand near hers, not demanding, just present. Emily lifted her hand and set it gently on his. No one spoke, but in that moment, something unspoken was understood. Not through words, but through the soft sync of two beating hearts. On the walk home, a quiet breeze rustled the yellow leaves that fell along the sidewalk. Andrew slowed his steps to match hers. "I want you to know," he said, stopping beneath a street lamp, "whatever this becomes, I'm grateful. You, and what you do, it's changed me." Emily looked up. Under the soft amber light, his face seemed closer than ever. "I feel the same," she whispered. "I don't know what this is, or where it's going, but I don't want to run from it." Andrew leaned in and pressed a light kiss to her forehead. A kiss without hurry, without demand. Just a quiet promise between two souls who had just begun to find each other. In the days that followed that evening, Emily made candles with a different kind of feeling, softer, calmer, more at peace. Her connection with Andrew remained unnamed, unhurried. They saw each other on weekends, took slow walks, brewed tea, or simply sat in quiet under the shade of her porch. But the quiet rhythm they had begun to build started to tremble, with one unexpected phone call from a luxury boutique in the city. That morning began like any other. Emily was melting wax in her small kitchen, the scent of lavender and honey filling the air. But when the phone rang, her hands paused mid-stir. "Hello, I'm Marianne from Boutique Allura," a smooth professional voice said. "We're very impressed with your candles and would love to invite you to create a limited edition collection for our next season." Emily blinked. Boutique Allura, one of the city's most exclusive retailers. The name alone could change a maker's entire career. "We'd need a few small adjustments," Marianne continued. "Minimalist design, our branding on the labels, and a color scheme aligned with our aesthetic. Our in-house team would handle production based on your prototypes." Emily hesitated. "So, I wouldn't make the candles myself? You'd be the name behind the collection, but we'd take care of the rest." The call ended with promises of prestige. But when Emily set the phone down, her kitchen felt suddenly unfamiliar. The wax was still warm, but her heart had gone cold. That evening, Andrew came by as usual. When Emily showed him the boutique's card, recognition flickered in his eyes. "This is huge, Emily. They're well known. Working with them would take your brand to another level." She shook her head, her voice quiet. "But it wouldn't be me anymore." Andrew frowned. "You'd still be the creator. They'd just help get your work out to more people. They'd change everything, from design to scent. I'd be just a name on the label." Emily looked at him, her voice low but steady. He sighed. "Sometimes you have to let go of small things to grow." "Those small things," she whispered, "are my soul. Every batch of wax I melt, every scent I blend, it's memory, feeling, not just production." The silence between them thickened. They looked at each other, but no longer met in the same place. "Maybe you're afraid of change," Andrew said softly. Emily clenched her hands, her eyes shimmering. "No, I'm afraid of losing myself." Andrew left shortly after. No shouting, no blame, just a quiet distance that walked with him to the door. The silence didn't hurt, but it echoed. Alone, Emily lit a lavender candle and sat at her work table. She looked at the old molds, the handwritten notes, sketches marked with fading pencil lines. To some it was just a craft, but to her it was a way to keep a piece of her mother and herself alive. And now one quiet question circled her thoughts. If she moved forward, would she still be Emily? Since that evening, a quiet space settled between Emily and Andrew. No texts, no calls. Just two people retreating into their own corners, each needing time to listen to the voice inside. But sometimes it's in the silence that we begin to truly understand what we can't afford to lose. Emily didn't sign the contract. She sent a brief email to Boutique Laura, grateful, respectful, but firm. I'm not ready to trade the soul of my candles for a place on a luxury shelf. Right after, she messaged Andrew. One quiet sentence. I need time. I need space. She exhaled slowly, as if letting go of something she'd been holding for too long. No blame, no accusations. Just someone choosing to step back before losing herself. Andrew read the message while sitting alone in his office. He held the phone for a long while, unable to find any words that felt right. That evening, he returned to his mother's house. The house smelled of fresh-baked pastries. It was quiet, warm, familiar. Margaret looked at him for a moment and said without asking, "You hurt her, didn't you?" Andrew lowered his head. "I just wanted her to grow, to have bigger chances. By asking her to become someone she's not?" He fell silent. Margaret poured tea, her voice soft but steady. "You've always thought love is helping someone go farther. But sometimes, love is knowing when to stand still, so they can be who they are." Andrew looked at her, as if hearing those words for the first time with his heart. "She doesn't need you to lead the way," Margaret continued. "She needs you to walk beside her, in step, with respect." That night, Andrew lay in his childhood bedroom, the same place where he once read books by the glow of a yellow lamp. On his desk sat the candle Emily had made, one she hadn't lit yet. He picked it up, held it close. The scent of lavender and honey filled the room, gentle, honest, and real. And suddenly he understood. He had tried to lift Emily into a version of success the world defined, forgetting that she had already been shining, right where she stood. That night, Andrew lay awake for a long time. He watched the soft glow from the candle Emily had made, and finally understood. We don't always lose the ones we love because we didn't love them enough, but because we loved them the wrong way. The next morning, he rose earlier than usual. Not anxious, but clear. For the first time in days, he knew what he had to do. Not to fix things, but to show her that real love walks beside, not ahead. Sunday morning. The market buzzed with life as usual. Colorful stalls, chatter, and golden morning light spilling across cobblestones. Emily was back at her familiar booth. Nothing flashy, nothing loud, but the soft scent from her freshly poured candles still drew people in. She was arranging boxes when something caught her eye. Just a few booths away, a new sign stood tall. Heritage Light, honoring the hands behind the craft. The booth didn't sell anything. Instead, it featured large photographs. Weathered hands, old looms, wooden molds. Beneath each image was a handwritten story. Simple, heartfelt. And behind the counter stood Andrew. He wore a simple shirt, no business suit in sight. He was chatting with an older artisan, jotting notes into a worn notebook. Emily paused. Her heart stirred, not from surprise, but from something deeper. Change. A few minutes later, Andrew walked toward her. Not rushed, not apologetic, just sincere. "I wasn't sure if you'd want to talk," he began, "but I needed to come." Emily looked at him gently. "That stall, it's yours?" He nodded. "Not to sell, to tell. Stories of the people behind the work. I called it Heritage Light because there's no light more real than someone's truth." He paused, eyes steady. "I was wrong to think helping you meant leading you. I get it now. What you needed was someone beside you, right?" Emily's eyes shimmered, but this time with warmth, not pain. "You stepped back," she said quietly, "so I could stay myself." Andrew smiled. "And if you'll let me, I'd like to keep walking beside you." No grand apologies, just a nod, a soft smile, and one small step closer to her booth. That day, the market seemed brighter than usual, and in the air, laced with wax and lavender, something quietly relit, gentle but sure. That autumn, the weekend market buzzed as usual, but the Heritage Light booth had grown, now a cozy little space where people came not just to buy, but to listen. Emily still made candles like she always had, her hands still dusted with wax, her kitchen filled with the scent of lavender and anise. But this time, she wasn't alone. Andrew often came by in the late afternoons, helping her pack each box, write each handwritten note. They didn't speak much, but they didn't need to. Presence was enough. One evening, as candlelight washed the room in gold, and Diane sat smiling over her cup of tea, Andrew pulled a small box from his pocket. He knelt down, not flashy, not rehearsed. Just one simple sentence. "I don't want to walk this life with anyone else. Let's live together, with your mom, with the candles. Will you?" Emily froze. Diane looked at her daughter and smiled slowly, as if she'd known all along. Emily nodded, tears falling, but her lips curved gently. "I will." Months later, a craft exhibition titled Hands That Hold Light opened in an open-air art space, hosted by the Heritage Light team. Visitors didn't just see the finished products, they touched the process. Wax blending, scent pairing, mold pouring, hand engraving. At the center was a round wooden table. Emily sat there making candles in real time, telling stories behind every scent. She didn't need a stage, just her hands and the eyes of someone watching from the crowd. Andrew stood quietly among the guests. He didn't push forward, but Emily always knew where he was. From that small kitchen, Emily and her mother launched an online store. The steady stream of orders allowed Diane to continue her physical therapy. No more missed sessions due to cost. At night, the candlelight glowed softly, not out of need, but ritual. A ritual that kept them close. A new family, small but whole. No one knows what tomorrow holds. But for Emily, with love, respect, and a little light from the smallest of things, the future will always be warm, like a quiet candle glowing in the heart. One winter evening, the little kitchen glowed with soft golden candlelight. At the old wooden table, Emily sliced a fresh apple tart. Andrew poured tea and Diane sat by the window, quietly knitting. No one said much, just small, familiar gestures, simple, but filled with care. Emily looked at the two people she loved most, and a quiet feeling rose in her chest. Not overwhelming joy, but something deeper, peace, as if everything had finally settled into its rightful place. She thought about the journey, those quiet nights with her mother, the first time she met Andrew at the market, the turns, the doubts, and the distance they had to cross. She had once feared love meant sacrifice, that she'd have to bend, shift, or shrink herself to fit someone else's world. But now, as she saw Andrew's gentle smile placing a cup of tea before her, she understood. Real love doesn't try to change you. It accepts you and grows with you while letting you remain whole. Her little candle booth still sat in the same quiet corner of the market, but now it had become a destination, not just for light, but for stories. Heritage Light was no longer just an idea. It had become a community. Potters, weavers, embroiderers, all found a place to shine in their own way. Diane, thanks to steady income from the online store, was recovering well. She often said, crafts never paid the bills until they were truly loved. Andrew, once driven by results and speed, had learned to slow down. He still ran his business, but now spent time hosting artisan workshops where he mostly listened, not led. That night after dinner, the three sat quietly. Candlelight danced in the breeze. Emily reached out and held her mother's and Andrew's hands. Warm, not just from fire, but from love. In that glow, nothing sparkled, just a family. Small, but whole. A tradition, simple but enduring. And a love, not loud, but everlasting.